The air in Mr. Albright's office was thick with a silence that felt heavier than grief. It was a calculating silence, sharp and cold, emanating from the woman sitting opposite me. Margaret, my mother-in-law, clutched a lace handkerchief in her bony fingers, but her eyes were dry. They were fixed on the polished mahogany desk that separated us, a desk that held the last will and testament of her son, my late husband, James. I sat with my hands clasped in my lap, my own sorrow a deep, quiet ache in my chest. It had only been a month since I'd lost James, the kind, gentle man I had loved for 10 years. His sudden illness had stolen him from us in a matter of weeks, leaving a void that felt vast and unfillable. The funeral had been a blur of condolences and casseroles, but this, the reading of his will, felt like the final, brutal severing of our bond. Mr. Albright, a man whose weary face showed the burden of countless such meetings, cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today to read the last will and testament of James Arthur Sterling," he began, his voice a low, formal rumble. "As per his instructions, the only people present are his mother, Margaret Sterling, and his wife, Amelia Sterling." Margaret straightened her spine, a flicker of something triumphant in her gaze. She had always seen me as an intruder, a woman who had stolen her son's affection, and more importantly, his loyalty. Our relationship had been a decade-long war of attrition, fought with polite smiles, backhanded compliments, and a tension so thick you could cut it with a dinner knife. She believed James's duty was to her first and foremost, a belief she held on to with the tenacity of a bulldog. "Before I begin," Mr. Albright continued, adjusting his spectacles, "I must state that James was of sound mind and body when he drafted this document 2 years ago. It has been verified and is legally binding." He picked up the stack of papers, the crisp sound echoing in the quiet room. My heart hammered against my ribs. James and I had discussed our future, of course, but the specifics of his will were something we'd never delved into. "Everything is taken care of, my love," he would say, kissing my forehead. "You won't have to worry about a thing." I had trusted him completely. Mr. Albright started reading through the legal jargon, his voice a monotonous drone. He detailed minor bequests first: a collection of antique maps to his university, a donation to a local animal shelter he and I had volunteered at, his vintage watch to his cousin. With each item named, I felt a fresh pang of loss, a memory attached to every object. The maps we had framed together for his study, the stray dog we had nursed back to health, the feel of his wrist as he fastened that watch. Margaret, however, looked increasingly impatient. She shifted in her seat, the rustle of her stiff black dress a sound of irritation. She was waiting for the main event: the house, the investments, the family inheritance that she believed was rightfully hers. She had made it clear in subtle and not so subtle ways that she expected to be restored to her position as the primary beneficiary of James's estate, just as she had been before he met me. "And now," Mr. Albright said, pausing to take a sip of water, "we come to the primary assets." This was it. Margaret leaned forward almost imperceptibly, her eyes glued to the document in the lawyer's hands. "The property at 12 Aspen Way," he read, "along with all its contents, I bequeath to my beloved wife, Amelia Sterling." A sharp intake of breath came from across the desk. I felt a wave of relief so profound it almost made me dizzy, but it was immediately overshadowed by the venom in Margaret's stare. The house was our home. It was where James and I had built our life, every room filled with shared laughter and whispered dreams. The idea of losing it had been a source of terror I hadn't dared to acknowledge. "Furthermore," Mr. Albright went on, his voice steady, "my portfolio of stocks and bonds, managed by Sterling Investments, is to be transferred in its entirety to my wife, Amelia Sterling. It is my wish that she be financially secure for the rest of her life." "What?" The word escaped Margaret's lips as a choked whisper. Her face, already pale, had turned a ghostly white. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her purse. She looked from me to Mr. Albright, her expression one of pure disbelief, as if he had deliberately misread the words. I couldn't bring myself to feel any joy, only a deepening sadness. James had known. He had known what his mother was like, and he had taken steps to protect me. This final act of love, this testament from beyond the grave, was both a comfort and a painful reminder of what I had lost. He was still taking care of me, even in death. Mr. Albright continued, "The family heirlooms, including my great-grandfather's desk and my mother's jewelry currently in my possession, are to be returned to my mother, Margaret Sterling." It was a small concession, a token gesture, and we all knew it. Margaret let out a sound that was half scoff, half sob. The jewelry was already hers, merely stored in James's safe. The desk was a sentimental piece, but it was nothing compared to the fortune she had just seen slip through her fingers. The lawyer read on, detailing the final accounts and arrangements. As he neared the end, he gathered the pages, tapping them into a neat stack on the desk. This concludes the last will and... He stopped. His eyes scanned the final page again, a slight frown creasing his brow. He was holding the last page, a single sheet, separate from the main stapled document. He looked up, his gaze meeting mine, then shifting to Margaret. In that moment, I saw it. A movement so fast I almost missed it. Margaret's hand, the one holding the handkerchief, darted across the desk. With a single swift motion, she snatched the loose page, crumpling it into her fist before Mr. Albright could react. "Mrs. Sterling!" the lawyer exclaimed, his voice sharp with alarm. He stood up, leaning over the desk. "That is a legal document. You must return it immediately." "It's nothing," Margaret hissed, her face a mask of defiance. She was trying to push the crumpled paper into her handbag. "An addendum. A mistake. It's not important." But the look of panic in her eyes told a different story. My own heart began to race. What was on that page that she was so desperate to hide? Mr. Albright, to his credit, was not a man to be trifled with. He rounded the desk, his expression stern. "I am legally obligated to read the entire will as instructed by your son. Hand it to me now, or I will be forced to call security." Her face contorted with rage, but she knew she was beaten. Her hand trembled as she opened her fist, revealing the wrinkled ball of paper. With a gesture of utter contempt, she threw it onto the desk. Mr. Albright carefully smoothed it out. The silence in the room was electric. He spent a long moment reading it to himself, his eyebrows climbing higher on his forehead. Then he cleared his throat, his gaze lifting to meet mine. He looked puzzled, but resolute. He held the page up and read, his voice ringing with a new, strange authority. "One final clause. To my wife, Amelia Sterling, I also leave..." He paused, looking directly at me. "The contents of Locker 7B at the downtown branch of Sterling Bank and Trust, the key to which is taped to the back of this page. And my name. I give her my name, and the right to use it, no matter what comes next." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. My name. What could that possibly mean? I was his wife. I already had his name. Margaret's gasp was sharp, a sound of pure fury, and it broke the spell. "That's absurd," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "This is meaningless. A trick. He was unwell." "On the contrary, Mrs. Sterling," Mr. Albright said, his tone firm as he laid the flattened page back on the desk. "As I stated earlier, James was of sound mind when he drafted this. This codicil, though unconventional, is legally binding. The phrasing is unusual, I'll grant you, but the instruction regarding the locker is perfectly clear." He turned the page over. Taped securely to the back, as James had written, was a small silver key. It looked like a simple safe deposit box key, but in that moment it felt like the most significant object in the world. Mr. Albright carefully peeled the tape off and slid the key across the polished surface of the desk toward me. It stopped just inches from my fingers. "And as for the matter of the name," the lawyer continued, looking at Margaret with a stern expression, "it is a reaffirmation, a symbolic but powerful statement of his intent. The law is already clear on Mrs. Amelia Sterling's status. This clause simply underscores it." He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, as if navigating a minefield. I had the distinct impression he understood something I didn't. My hand was shaking as I reached out and closed my fingers around the small, cool key. It was a tangible link to James, a final mission he had left for me. I looked at Margaret. Her face was a storm of emotions, but the most prominent was a raw, desperate hatred. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about this key, this locker, and the mysterious final words. "This meeting is concluded," Mr. Albright announced, gathering the papers and placing them into a folder. He looked at me with a glimmer of sympathy in his weary eyes. "Mrs. Sterling, Amelia, my condolences again on your loss. If you require any assistance accessing the locker at Sterling Bank and Trust, please let me know. The branch manager will be expecting you." So he had already known. This wasn't a surprise to him, only to us. The thought sent a fresh shiver down my spine. What had James been planning? I murmured my thanks, my voice barely a whisper, and stood up on unsteady legs. I wanted nothing more than to flee that suffocating room, to get away from the woman who looked at me as if I were a thief who had stolen her entire world. Margaret rose as well, her movement stiff and regal. She didn't spare a glance for the lawyer. Her eyes were locked on me, on the key hidden in my clenched fist. We walked out of the office in silence, but the moment the heavy door clicked shut behind us, she grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a vice. "You will not get away with this," she hissed, her face inches from mine. Her breath was hot with anger. "That locker, whatever is in it, it belongs to this family, not to you. Let go of me," I said, trying to pull my arm free, but she held on tight. "James was a fool, blinded by a pretty face," she continued, her voice low and venomous. "He had responsibilities, duties. He was meant to carry on a legacy, not throw it all away on you. You think you've won? You have no idea what you've just stepped into." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I stammered, rattled by her intensity. "This was James's decision." "You will give me that key," she demanded, her eyes darting to my closed hand. "It's the only way to protect yourself, to protect his memory from what's about to happen." Her words were a threat, but they were laced with something else, something that sounded like fear. Why would she be afraid? What could possibly be in that locker that would frighten the unshakable Margaret Sterling? Her desperation to hide that page suddenly made a terrifying kind of sense. It wasn't just about greed, it was about hiding a secret. With a surge of adrenaline, I wrenched my arm free. "No," I said, my voice gaining a strength I didn't know I possessed. "These were his last wishes. I am going to honor them." For a moment, I thought she might strike me. Her hand was raised slightly, her face contorted in a snarl. But then the elevator chimed, the door sliding open, and the moment was broken. I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor, and didn't look back as the doors slid shut on her furious, defeated face. As the elevator descended, my body began to tremble. The confrontation had left me weak, but also strangely resolved. Margaret was scared, and I needed to find out why. I didn't go home. The thought of being in our house so full of memories felt unbearable right now. Instead, I drove downtown, my hand still clutching the key so tightly that its ridges were imprinted on my palm. The Sterling Bank and Trust Building was an old, imposing structure, a monument to the wealth and power of the family I had married into, a family Margaret believed I had no right to. Her words echoed in my mind. "You have no idea what you've just stepped into." And that strange final gift from James. My name. I give her my name, no matter what comes next. It was a protection, a shield. But a shield against what? I parked the car and took a deep breath. My heart was pounding, a mixture of fear and anticipation. I didn't know what I would find inside that locker. Financial documents? Old letters? Something else entirely? Whatever it was, James had wanted me to have it. He had known his mother would fight it, and he had put his trust in me to see it through. I owed it to him. Clutching the key in my purse, I walked up the marble steps and through the heavy bronze doors of the bank, stepping out of the gray afternoon and into the brightly lit, unknown future James had left for me. The interior of Sterling Bank and Trust was as imposing as its exterior. Cool marble floors gleamed under ornate chandeliers, and the hushed, reverent atmosphere felt more like a cathedral dedicated to commerce than a simple bank. Portraits of stern-faced men, generations of Sterlings, lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to follow my every move. I could almost feel their silent judgment. I did not belong here. That was the message they and Margaret had been sending me for years. A polite but firm-looking woman at a reception desk directed me to the manager's office. I was announced as Mrs. James Sterling, and the name felt both like a comfort and a target on my back. The manager, a man named Mr. Harrison, stood as I entered. He was younger than I expected, with kind eyes that held a hint of sadness. He had the polished demeanor of a career banker, but there was a warmth to his smile that was genuine. "Mrs. Sterling, please come in," he said, gesturing to a comfortable leather chair. "I was so sorry to hear of James's passing. He was more than a client. He was a friend. He spoke of you often." The unexpected kindness made my throat tighten. "Thank you," I managed to say. He left something for me. In a locker." I held up the key, my hand still trembling slightly. Mr. Harrison nodded, his expression becoming serious. "Yes. He made the arrangements with me personally some time ago. He was very specific in his instructions." He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "He said you would be coming alone, and that I was to give you unrestricted and private access. He also said his mother might inquire about it. I am to tell her, and anyone else, that the locker was emptied and closed by James himself a month before he passed. As of today, officially, Locker 7B does not exist." A cold realization washed over me. This was a conspiracy, orchestrated by my own husband. He had anticipated every move Margaret would make, every pressure she would apply, and had built a fortress of secrecy around this final message to me. The depth of his foresight was staggering and a little frightening. "I understand," I said, my voice barely audible. "Follow me," Mr. Harrison said gently. He led me from his office, through the main hall, and toward a massive circular steel door that looked like it belonged on a submarine. The vault. He entered a code, turned a series of wheels, and with a heavy, satisfying thud, the door swung open. The air that flowed out was cool and still, smelling of old paper and metal. The vault was smaller than I imagined, lined floor to ceiling with gleaming stainless steel boxes. We walked down a narrow aisle until we stopped before a small door marked 7B. "Take all the time you need," Mr. Harrison said, his voice echoing softly in the confined space. "There is a private viewing room just down the hall. I will be in my office when you are finished." He handed me a small portable lamp, and then, with a final, compassionate look, he turned and left, the vault door remaining open behind him. I was alone. My heart hammered as I inserted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. I pulled the small door open, and my breath caught in my throat. The box wasn't full. It contained only 2 items. The first was a thick, leather-bound journal. The second was a large, sealed manila envelope. Both were addressed to me in James's familiar, elegant handwriting. I carried them, my hands shaking, to the viewing room Mr. Harrison had mentioned. It was a simple, windowless cubicle with a small desk and a single chair, designed for privacy. I switched on the lamp, sat down, and with a sense of both dread and longing, I opened the journal first. The first page was a letter. "My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, then it means I am gone, and I am sorrier for that than you can ever know. I am sorry for the grief I have caused you, and I am sorry for the burden I am about to place upon you. I hope, in time, you can forgive me for both. You must be wondering about my mother, about the secret page, about what could possibly be so important that I would orchestrate this little drama. The truth is, my love, our life has been built upon a lie. A very old, very carefully guarded lie. The sterling fortune, the name my mother prizes above all else, was founded on theft. My grandfather, a man lauded as a visionary, ruined his business partner, a man named Thomas Gable, through fraud. He falsified documents, bankrupted him, and built our family's empire on the ruins of another man's life. Thomas Gable died penniless and broken, and his family disappeared into obscurity. My hands grew cold as I read the words. I looked at the sealed manila envelope on the desk. The truth was in there. The proof. I discovered this by accident years ago, in my grandfather's old desk, the one I bequeathed back to my mother. She knows. She has always known. It is the secret she has protected her entire life. It is the reason she fought so hard to control me and to control you. She feared that my love for you, for your honesty and your good heart, would lead me to expose the truth and destroy the sterling name. And she was right to be afraid. For years, I have lived with this poison. I wanted to come clean, to make amends. But how? To admit the truth would be to unravel everything, to tarnish the memory of a grandfather I'd been taught to revere, to destroy my mother, and to plunge our entire family into a scandal from which it would never recover. So I did nothing. I was a coward. I chose silence, and I chose the comfort of the life that this lie afforded us. But my illness changed everything. The thought of leaving this world with this secret intact, leaving my mother to perpetuate the lie, and leaving you in her power was more than I could bear. But I am still a coward. I could not face the consequences in life, so I have passed the decision to you in death. The envelope contains all the proof. The original forged documents I found, and sworn affidavits from 2 former employees of my grandfather who knew the truth. It is undeniable. That is why I gave you my name. It is now your name to define. You can choose to destroy these documents, live the comfortable life I have provided for you, and keep the secret. No one will ever know. Or you can choose to reveal the truth, to seek out the descendants of Thomas Gable and make restitution, and to redefine the sterling name with honesty, no matter the cost. It is a terrible choice, I know, but you are the strongest, most principled person I have ever known. I trust you to make the right one. Whatever you decide, know that I loved you with all my heart. You were the one true thing in my life. Forever yours. James' tears streamed down my face as I finished the letter. I finally understood everything. The secret, Margaret's desperation, the lawyer's knowing glances, and the true meaning of James's final cryptic gift. He hadn't just left me a fortune. He had left me his conscience. He had left me a choice between comfortable silence and a devastating truth. My hand rested on the manila envelope. Inside lay the power to destroy a dynasty or to bury a ghost forever. And the choice was mine alone. The reading of my late husband James's will was a tense affair. His mother, Margaret, who had always resented me, sat opposite, expecting to inherit the fortune she believed was her birthright. The lawyer, Mr. Albright, began. The family home and the entirety of James's investment portfolio were left to me, his wife, Amelia. Margaret was aghast, her face pale with shock. As the lawyer finished, he noticed a separate final page. Before he could read it, Margaret snatched it, crumpling it in her fist. "That is a legal document," Mr. Albright demanded. Forced to return it, Margaret threw the wrinkled paper on the desk. The lawyer smoothed it out and read the final clause. James had left me the contents of a specific bank locker, the key for which was taped to the page. He also wrote, "And my name. I give her my name and the right to use it, no matter what comes next." Margaret's desperation to hide that page was my first clue that something was wrong. After the meeting, I went directly to the bank. The locker contained a journal and a sealed envelope from James. In a private room, I read his final words to me. Our life, he explained, had been built on a lie. The Sterling family fortune was founded on fraud. His grandfather had ruined his business partner, a man named Thomas Gable, and built an empire on the theft. His mother had known and guarded the secret her entire life. James had been too afraid to act, but his illness gave him the courage to pass the choice to me. The envelope contained all the proof. I could either destroy it and live a comfortable life, or I could reveal the truth and make amends to the Gable family. "I trust you to make the right choice," he wrote. The decision was clear. To live with the secret would be to dishonor his memory. I went to see Margaret. "Name your price for your silence," she said, assuming I wanted to blackmail her. "I know about Thomas Gable," I told her. "James left me all the proof. He gave me his name, and I will not allow it to be a symbol of deceit." I left her to her crumbling world and contacted my lawyers. We found Thomas Gable's grandchildren and made full restitution. The Sterling name was tarnished by the scandal, but as the story of my choice became public, it transformed into a narrative of integrity and courage. My life is simpler now, but it is honest. I honored my husband's last wish. I took his name and, in the end, I made it clean.